Hello, hello, hello. Jordan Chariton live. It is Monday, June 12th, 2023, right here in the United Corporations of America. If I stumble, mumble, bumble, or stumble, mumble, bumble, or fumble, it is because for those new parents out there, we are now in whatever stage regression this is. You know how kids, newborns, finally they start sleeping, but then they regress like at certain months. So last night, uh, my lovely daughter, who was 7 months old yesterday, woke up at 1 a.m. Then it took a while to get her back down, and then again at 4:30, and from there I just couldn't fall back asleep. So I am not running on. I've had like 2 cups of coffee, but I'm kind of fading. So hopefully you could pick me up. Apologies if I mumble, stumble. Joining me in a few minutes will be Graham Elwood, the political vigilante, comic, and political commentator. Graham Elwood on YouTube, who has extensively covered, perhaps more than most, the just horrific Jeffrey Epstein, child trafficking ring, Wall Street's role in the Jeffrey Epstein, the government's role in protecting Jeffrey Epstein. So Graham will be joining in a few minutes. Then later on, Renee Johnston will be joining. She came on last week about the news that Cornel West announced that he was running for president under the People's Party. There's been some new developments with that. So we're going to have Renee back on. I don't know if you saw over the weekend some kind of rumbling that at least a meeting might take place between Cornel West and the Green Party. So we'll give you an update a little bit later on that. And then have you noticed that CNN seems just hell-bent on having town halls with candidates that are at like -20 in the polls? They're having one with Chris Christie tonight, who on average is polling at 1%, but they won't have one with RFK, who I've made clear is not my cup of tea, but he is polling between 15 and 20%. And they will not have one, as far as I know, with Marianne Williamson, who is polling anywhere from, 6 to 12%. Very interesting, isn't that? So we're going to get into that a little bit later. But please smash that like button. Share this live stream. The more people that press like, the more people that will see this very live stream. Very, very important. Also, remember, since the summer is now here, we're going to show you some of the designs a little bit later. But we're going to have some new gear in the Status Coup store. So we'd love to see you rocking Status Coup hats, Status Coup pool towels, iPhone cover. We got sweatpants, T-shirts, tees, and Colin's kind of sketching out, which we're going to show you a little bit later, some thoughts and designs for kind of like a Poison States of America line, since we cover so much environmental corruption, calamity, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll show you that a bit later. But for now, press that like button, share this live stream. Super chats are welcome. Tina's under the weather, but as a reminder, we're planning on sending Tina to Cop City in about a week or so for another week of actions related to Cop City. Even though the Atlanta City Council voted to move forward with it, there is still activities and protests going on. So we're going to be back on the ground covering Cop City, which is straight up fascism happening in Georgia. And also tomorrow I will be going to Bedminster, New Jersey, because Trump is formally getting arrested in Florida. So he'll be arrested and, whatever song and dance goes on for the classified documents case. But then he's flying up to give a speech to his supporters at his New Jersey golf club. So I'll be going there and interviewing his supporters. We won't be live because we're still waiting for the second live view that we just broadcast. We'll be recording interviews with his supporters. So we'll turn it around the next day. So that's all I got. Graham will be here in a minute, but let me just start. I mean, I think what the first story is basically the unholy alliance between what seems like a pretty horrific, like cartoon, evil movie type of story, something that you would think you'd see in like a series like True Detective, and Wall Street, shockingly. So, Colin, if you could pull up the JP Morgan settlement argument settles from CNBC. JP Morgan, who, by the way, nobody ever went to prison for tanking the global economy. And CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times have Jamie Dimon all the time, the president of JP Morgan Chase, who helped tank the global economy and foreclose on millions of people, including Graham Elwood, who will be on with us shortly. JP Morgan Chase is prepared to pay $290 million in a settlement with victims of the late sexual predator Jeffrey Epstein. The settlement does not include an admission of liability by the bank, the person said. Gotta love that. These settlements never, ever, ever include criminal penalties, for starters. I mean, you could poison the water in America. You could poison the air if you're Norfolk Southern. You could poison animals. You could poison adults, poison people's water. You're not going to prison. If I poison someone, I'm going to prison. If I create or I'm involved with a child sex trafficking ring, or I'm financing the person or helping to finance the person involved with a child finance ring, you better believe I'm going to prison and they're throwing away the key. But if you are the bank, because they bought the government, $290 million, which honestly, in the grand scheme of things, pennies on the dollar. And they don't have to admit fault. The announcement of the settlement came just hours before a judge ruled that the case in U.S. District Court in Manhattan can proceed as a class action lawsuit. The bank did not include details about the agreement in that announcement. The person familiar with the deal requested anonymity to discuss the details of the settlement. The parties in Jane Doe 1 versus JP Morgan Chase have informed the court that they have reached an agreement in principle to settle the putative class action lawsuit related to Jeffrey Epstein's crimes, which is subject to court approval, the bank said in a news release earlier Monday morning. Parties believe the settlement is in the best interest of all parties, yada, yada, yada. Settlement announcement comes 1 month after Deutsche Bank, where Epstein became a client after he was forced out by JP Morgan in 2013, settled with Epstein victims for $75 million. So, to be clear, and smash that like button, Graham's just telling me he's having a tech issue, but he'll be on in a minute. Totally happy for these women who there's really no dollar amount that could, I mean, can have PTSD for the rest of their life. The horror that they went through. I mean, I don't know about you guys and gals, but I watched 2 documentary series on Jeffrey Epstein. There's no amount of money that could make these women whole. I mean, it is what it is. But I'm happy, they're getting some form of, I don't know what you would call it, at least some form of justice. But the fact of the matter is, and if you could show that tweet, Colin, that I put in there from Matt Wallace, I don't know who he is, but I like the tweet. JP Morgan Chase has reached a settlement of $290 million over the Jeffrey Epstein case. When they are willing to pay that much to bury this thing, imagine how much worse it is than we are being told. I will not rest until every last one of them is exposed. Yeah. Imagine how much worse it is than you're being told. I mean, we haven't even gotten to Ghislaine Maxwell. We haven't gotten to politicians that were on that plane. Bill Clinton claimed he was never on the island, even though you have a groundskeeper on the record saying, a groundskeeper on Jeffrey Epstein's island saying, I saw Bill Clinton and Jeffrey Epstein sitting on the porch. I mean, you have witnesses seeing that. Fox News, who I don't exactly, source often, they got their hands on the flight logs, and Bill Clinton was on Jeffrey Epstein's plane over 20 times. We know that, from the royal family and Prince Andrew to God knows how many other politicians, potentially athletes, celebrities were involved with this. And JP Morgan, knowing about the complaints. I mean, all these people talk in New York City's elitist circles. They continued to have a massive account with Jeffrey Epstein. There was a regular transactions up the wazoo, which Graham could talk about better than I can. And they're getting off with $290 million. I mean, this is a company that makes billions of dollars a year, mostly through fraud. and they're getting away with a civil penalty that they do not have to admit fault. Make any sense? Tell me that no one is above the law. And some people are peeved, well, it's good that Trump's getting prosecuted, but what about Biden and Hillary and this and that? I'm with you. I would have indicted Hillary Clinton. I think Hunter Biden should be indicted. I think if there's evidence of the Biden crime family and Biden's involved, I agree. But there's something sick, Biden, in addition to a lot of other bullshit he ran on, he ran on restoring the soul of America. Well, the soul of America is massive banks fucking you up the ass, excuse my French, foreclosing on you through fraud, which my guest can tell you about. Looking the other way when they know of a massive child sex ring that's going on through the financing of their bank and getting off with a couple fucking shekels. Joining me now, the political vigilante, Graham Elwood. I was really training to keep it going.
I'm sorry. I was having a tech issue, but as soon as I log in, you're like, arrest Hillary Clinton and then Biden's, and I'm like, all right, let's get into it.
So, Graham, you, to your credit, maybe this is part of why YouTube dinged you and stole your money and demonetized you. So, everyone, please support Graham at Graham Elwood's channel on YouTube. You're on Rumble and other places as well.
I'm on rockfin.com/Graham Elwood. I'm thinking about giving Rumble a shot, but just go to grahamelwood.com is the best way to support me and subscribe to my channel. Even I'm demonetized, but I still do a show. In fact, I'll be going live later today. So yeah.
And anyway, sorry if it's a little scrambled on his end. It's Jeffrey Epstein from wherever he's hanging out, because I don't think he's dead. Anyway, so can you explain this? Because there's one tweet, I don't know if you saw it, but I just read this, if you could put it back up. Somebody, I don't know, he's got 1 million followers, but he's basically saying JP Morgan got off for $290 million. You better believe there's more under the hood if they're paying $290 million to settle this thing. What's your thoughts, since you covered this extensively all along?
Well, I mean, that tweet is really right on. You have to ask that question when anything involving Epstein, because the glaring lack of indictments is appalling and laughable at the same time. Because I'll backtrack. So last year I've had him on my show numerous times. He's a retired child crimes investigator, Eric Oldenburg. So he was a detective on the Phoenix Police Department for 24 years, and he investigated child crimes. He retired honorably. And I brought him on the show last year, and I was like, if you were the lead investigator, what would you be doing? He said, oh, Graham, we would be going through all the flight logs. We would be going through anyone that went to Epstein's Island. We would be investigating them. And he told me, he goes, I'm retired, Graham, and I just testified on a trial that's been going on for 10 years, where in the state of Arizona, they have a mandatory 18 years per child exploitation piece of video, a photo or a video, 18-year minimum. And he goes, the fact that, and I bring that up to show you the absurdity that no one else has been prosecuted. So we're all supposed to believe Epstein hung himself with a paper T-shirt. Yeah, totally believable.
Well, actually, I'm glad you brought that up, Colin. Can we just read real quick this second article? Because the AP, I guess, recently gave new details of Jeffrey Epstein's death. It's the Associated Press, so take it with a grain of salt. But 2 weeks before ending his life, Jeffrey Epstein sat in a corner of his Manhattan jail cell with his hands over his ears, desperate to muffle the sound of a toilet that wouldn't stop running. Epstein was agitated and unable to sleep, jail officials observed in records newly obtained by the Associated Press. He called himself a coward and complained he was struggling to adapt to life behind bars. Following his 2019 arrest on federal sex trafficking and conspiracy charges, his life of luxury reduced to concrete and steel cage. The disgraced financier was under psychological observation at the time for a suicide attempt just days earlier that left his neck bruised and scraped. Yet even after a 31-hour stint on suicide watch, Epstein insisted he wasn't suicidal, telling a jail psychologist he had a wonderful life and would be crazy to end it. and then 2 weeks later he ended it.
Yeah. Isn't it convenient how these stories, there might be some relevance to them, but the main thing you always have to look at with Epstein is who are we being distracted from, which is the most powerful people in the world. Because look, if he was trafficking kids with regular Joe Schmo people, there would be 36 indictments that come pouring down. So the fact that no one has been indicted, none of the co-conspirators, no one on the flight logs, I mean, no one on who was at his compound. I mean, it's we all know why. It's because it's the most powerful people. But all of these stories are just minor distractions, and it's always to kind of keep the focus on Epstein and Maxwell. So it's like, hey, we got him. You know, the bad guys are gone. He's gone. She's in jail. And we're not going to talk about the fact that, you know, Prince Andrew should have been extradited. I mean, he should be standing trial in America right now. I mean, it's you know, Julian Assange is in Belmarsh prison, but Prince Andrew can do whatever he wants. It's pretty insane that no other indictments have come down from this. I mean, when Epstein was first arrested 4 years ago now, July of 2019, we all remember the FBI wheeling out hard drives, you know, whatever else. Where's all that? Where is all that? And then, you know, you see how big the distraction is. I point this out very often. So in the Maxwell trial was December of 21. In that, 118 new pages of flight logs were released. In that, we saw that Donald Trump was on his plane 5 times, initially only believed to be 1, but there was 4 new flights that were discovered. Why didn't MSNBC and CNN, which have a hard on for Trump, they want to fry this guy 6 ways from Sunday. All they're talking about now is the indictments that just came out. Why weren't they screaming about that? They kept it quiet, because if they scream about that, then they're going to have to scream about the Clintons. They're going to have to scream about Alan Dershowitz. They're going to have to scream about.
I was going to say a lot of their friends were probably on there.
Yes, of course. So when you see that, then you know that these type of, getting back to what you talked about, the $298 million JP Morgan Chase is like, that is a slap on the wrist versus Jamie Dimon.
With no liability. They don't have to admit liability, which is always the case. Right.
Always. So it's literally just a traffic fine. I mean, and you know, $298 million is no small sum, but if you're worth tens, hundreds of billions of dollars, I mean, it's like you and I paying a fine of $500 or $1,000. It might pinch a little bit, but it's not going to wipe us out, you know? And so that's the thing. And what this fine is also, again, like you say, they don't have to admit guilt. So now we don't have to uncover how Epstein, JP Morgan, I've done videos on this, you've done videos on this. They knew. There's internal emails showing the banking, the legal team in the bank was like, this is not good. They knew what Epstein was doing. They knew he was funneling money for his sex trafficking through their bank. They knew he had his fake hedge fund, because this is what Epstein would do. He'd have powerful people over to his house for a party, and a butler would come over or something and say, would you like to have a massage from a beautiful young woman? Sure. It would be an underage kid. There'd be a sex act performed. They'd videotape it, and they'd say, hey, rich guy, now I need you to do, you know, invest in my fake hedge fund. And this all went through Deutsche Bank and JP Morgan Chase primarily. So this should be a you know, tidal wave of indictment should be pouring down from this. And instead we get a fine, and then always some sort of like, we got him. And then this article about, you know, Epstein, maybe he was suicidal, maybe he wasn't. You know what that article is doing? When we're all debating, did he kill himself? Did he not? We're not asking the questions of, where's the list of names? How come there aren't more indictments being brought down here? Like, I'm going to try to get an interview with Dr. Cornel West, and we're going to talk about that. I'm sure there's a lot about Dr. West I'm excited about. People's Party, we can talk about their problems or whatever. But if I ask him, I'm going to ask him point blank, if you're president of the United States, are you going to get a special prosecutor and get the people on Epstein's list and put them behind bars? Because that's what needs to happen.
Right.
If I was president, I would appoint my friend, former detective Eric Oldenburg, to lead up the case and get these people locked up.
And you know what I find so inconsistent across the board? On one end, Democrats, mostly liberal people, I think progressives too, we obviously have a major problem with the mass carnage and shootings all over this country, particularly the children. We care about the children. Nancy Pelosi, it's the children. And Republicans, all of a sudden, are very fascinated. Well, not all of a sudden, but they're obsessed with genitals, child's genitals. So you got Democrats are worried about children getting massacred, which I think is legit. I think all people should, frankly, be. And you got Republicans, mostly a culture war issue, but they care so much about protecting children now, not economically, just their genitals. But nobody cares about a massive child sex trafficking ring, which it seems had Democrats, Republicans, agnostics a part of it. And by the way, I've covered the Trump indictment. I'm not going to do whataboutism. He should be indicted. I also think Hillary Clinton should have been indicted. But specifically on the indictment, I mean, it's overwhelming. I mean, he literally had fucking national secrets next to the toilet. But the difference between that indictment and the lack of criminal persecution here and prosecution, I said I thought Trump was going to be indicted, A, because I think he's guilty, but B, when you piss off, in American history, as you know, when you piss off the CIA, you get on their shit list. When you piss off the FBI, the NSA, you're dead man walking. I don't want to get in trouble with YouTube, but go ask JFK. Go ask Assange. Trump pissed off the CIA. He had documents about spies, human sources. He had documents about, nuclear programs. I mean, he got on the deep state's, list. In this case, the deep state seems in league with Wall Street to put the kibosh on this.
Yeah, I mean, it's really like they can have their selective outrage. I mean, they could be, and I agree, they should be indicting Hillary Clinton, any of the Democrats, George Bush. I mean, they could indict all of these people for all of. They could indict Obama for war crimes. I mean, they could.
How about Henry Kissinger before he goes?
Yeah, let's lock that guy up. They could indict all these people.
I saw yesterday, Ted Kaczynski died, and people were making great points. I mean, I'm not condoning it, but he killed 3 people, and they threw him away. Henry Kissinger's 100. He killed how many? Like hundreds of thousands of people.
Kissinger. Lee Camp and I talk, on government secrets. You talk about all these CIA operations and these coups, and so many of them in the 60s and 70s, Kissinger was involved with, and Alan Dulles, going back to your point about the CIA. And so it's really, whenever, and you bring up the CIA back to Epstein, there's credible evidence that he was a CIA asset. Most notably, Acosta said, when he was prosecuting him in 2009 for sex with a minor in Florida, was told, and this is a quote from Acosta, I was told to back off because Epstein was a CIA asset. And there's Maxwell's dad worked for Mossad. So the CIA has their fingerprints all over this. And that's when I'm so leery of these little stories coming out about, Epstein said he was fine, or whatever in prison. It's just like, I think about the interview I did again 4 years ago after Epstein's death with CIA whistleblower John Kiriakou. And he said on my show, when he first heard Epstein dying, he called up a CIA friend of his and goes, this has to be the Israelis, right? That was his first thought, is that Mossad was somehow involved in this. And so we're so not getting the full story. And again, like to your point, if we care so much about children, you don't want them to get surgeries or whatever, culture war, you don't want them to get shot. Okay, valid, but then we're just going to let them get trafficked. Right. I mean, and no one gets prosecuted. It's such a preposterous double standard. If it wasn't so offensive, it'd be laughable.
And I'm not trying to invoke your PTSD here, but we got to bring it full circle. I find it interesting that this settlement happens at the same time that the media is slobbering over Jamie Dimon's balls and pushing him to run for president. If you have the article, Colin, Wall Street boosts Jamie Dimon, the CEO of J.P. Morgan Chase, hinted at a presidential run on Wednesday, telling Bloomberg News, maybe one day I'll serve my country in one capacity or the other. Dimon had pretty much ruled out running and said he believes he makes a positive difference in his current job. Graham, I don't know if it was JP Morgan, but can you describe what a positive difference Wall Street made in your life about a decade ago?
Thank God. Well, someone from Wall Street is going to stand up for Americans, because that's all they've ever done. Yeah. I mean, yes, for those of you in your audience that don't know, I lost my home to foreclosure. I was one of the 6 million people, and it was not specifically JP Morgan Chase, but it was, I had a loan, a mortgage. I'll give everybody the quick little 2-minute elevator pitch of how the banking and political system works in this country. I had a mortgage with IndyMac Bank. Mine and thousands of other mortgages were bought up by One West Bank, then headed by Steve Mnuchin. And he bought my mortgage and everybody else's for 30 to 40 cents on the dollar. And I was living in a nice neighborhood blocks away from the beach in Santa Monica in a nice condominium. And they said, it's better to kick this guy out and sell his place. So they told me, first, I was starting, the recession had hit. I was having a hard time, getting work because I was going into the holiday season. I usually used to do a lot of Christmas parties as a stand-up comic for companies. They paid quite well. But all the companies stopped the Christmas parties. All this work fell out. It even affected the entertainment industry. And so I was starting to have problems paying my mortgage. And my mortgage company called me up in like October or November of 2008, after the crisis had hit, and George Bush had put roughly $700 billion in stimulus, and they said, we're going to cut your mortgage payment in half for 3 months. We'll put you on what's called a 3-month forbearance. At the end of the 3 months, we'll restructure your loans. You have a lower payment. Everything will be great. Oh, awesome! At the end of the 3 months, they go, oh, you know what? You don't qualify, so you're now 3 months behind. And I was like, what? And then Obama gets sworn in, who I voted for. And I'm like, Obama will fix it. Bush is corrupt. The Democrats, we all know how much better they are. Same thing happened. Put you on a 3-month forbearance, cut your mortgage payment in half. At the end of that 3 months, same thing. Oh, you don't qualify. Now, kiddo, you're 6 months behind. Good luck coming up from paying off that. I hired lawyers who gave me bad advice, and maybe they were part of the scam. They told me, stop making your mortgage payments. This will force you. They don't want you to foreclose, and the foreclosure judges will rule in your favor. Okay, great. They didn't. I lost my home. So Obama gave close to $1 trillion. So it was 1.5, almost $2 trillion was given to the banks by both presidents from both of these corrupt political parties. And they took my home. I foreclosed on it in March of 2010. After a 16-month battle, and I was one of 6 million people that had their homes lost. And then books like Chain of Title came out, written by Dave Dane, the documentary Inside Job, which showed that Goldman Sachs has been in every presidential cabinet since Reagan. So when I hear Jamie Dimon running a run for president, I would vote for RFK's whacked out policies before that Wall Street soulless cocksucker. And I apologize if I've offended any actual cocksuckers out there.
I might vote for Lucifer. I might vote for Lucifer.
I would vote.
And I don't want to say the person, because I met her a long time ago, and I wasn't in my journalistic capacity, but I know someone very close to Jamie Dimon. Let's put it that way. Family member, not friends, but I worked in the same place as her for one period. The venom that person had for her family member, I'll leave it at that, not to say who it was. It's like a cartoon villain movie script, this person. And what I also want to get at before we switch topics, I find it, listen, I'm not going to do whataboutism. I think Trump's indictment stands on its own. But I do understand when people kind of check out and aren't focused on what Trump did because they want to say, what about this person, that person, this person? Well, what about Bill Clinton? There's a massive discrepancy here between when he says I was never on his island, when you have the groundskeeper on the record, on camera. By the way, folks, we have some breaking news I'll get to in the next segment about Cornel West. Saying I saw Bill Clinton and I saw Bill Clinton and Jeffrey Epstein sitting on the porch on the island. Fox News, who I don't often source, but they had the flight logs. He was on there over 20 times.
26.
Yes.
26 times. Not only that, George, so you've got 26 times. Bill Clinton blatantly lied and said I was only on 4 times. So he's already admitting to 4. So he was on 26 times. You also have the fact that, so people might not know this, after you've been president, you get Secret Service detail for life. For life. He told the Secret Service detail he didn't want him on 8 of those flights. He didn't bring a Secret Service detail. Then you have Hillary was on twice, flight log show. Bill and Hillary were on Epstein's compound in New Mexico numerous times. And Ghislaine Maxwell was at their daughter's wedding in 2011. That was 2 years after Maxwell settled out of court for sex trafficking in 2009, because she was listed as part of the case in Florida. They did a civil suit. So it's like the Clintons are so guilty. And again, going back to Mar-a-Lago, people were trafficked out of Mar-a-Lago. It's like they need to indict all these people. If Jamie Dimon runs as a Wall Street Epstein pal,
well, I should update. You know, if anyone was worried, he came out recently saying, "I'm not going to run," but they did fluff his balls trying to float it. Yes, but you never know. I mean, if it is Biden versus Trump again, maybe the establishment will say we need an outsider revolutionary figure. Maybe Dimon could get in.
I'm not a big proponent of guns, but if he became president, I would buy a gun.
Okay. To be clear, YouTube, we're talking figuratively. Anyway, yeah. But last question on this. I mean, where does it go from here? Because it just seems to me they're trying to check boxes. We got the sacrificial lamb. I mean, I don't want to say sacrificial lamb. She was guilty as sin too. Ghislaine Maxwell. Epstein's, killed himself. We got the civil fines. Maybe we'll do another big civil case, but I don't see Merrick Garland doing any criminal investigation into anyone. I'm sure there's some investigative reporting going on the Epstein thing, but not by the New York Times or the Washington Post or anyone with resources. No. So it just seems like this is kind of the Flint water version of child sex trafficking.
No, Flint water is such a great example, Jordan. They're just going to kind of do nothing. There'll be no big sweeping indictments. There'll just be these little sort of distraction trickle out stories like, see, we're on it, when they're not really. I mean, again, last time I was on your show, we talked about how, a year ago in May, when everyone was talking about Roe v. Wade, which is an important subject to talk about, but that was when, oh, by the way, Ghislaine Maxwell was moved to a minimum security prison in Florida, and there was no media following her at all. I mean, there's so many odd things about this. The DOJ won't show her mugshot. Now, federal courts, you're not allowed to have cameras. But if you go to the Whitey Bulger DOJ page or the what is it, MS-13, that gang, they have mugshots of Whitey Bulger. They have 13 very scary photos of these drug cartel guys with the tattoos and everything. They have their mugshots, but they can't seem to find a mugshot of Ghislaine Maxwell. And it's if they moved Whitey Bulger to a minimum security prison, there would be a gaggle of paparazzi and media people following him, showing him walking out in the jumpsuit with his handcuffs tied. There's no video at all of her being moved. None. I find that very odd. This is like, I mean, you couldn't turn in any direction during the Johnny Depp Amber Heard case without hearing something about it, something somewhere. And Ghislaine Maxwell, there's no talk of this. So they're going to they want it to go. This is how the ruling elites that do the sex trafficking, they don't want everybody to know how. So they always try to seal it off. One bad guy, it's like the Catholic Church. Few bad apples, or the police department. Few bad apples. They don't want you to see the whole systemic coordinated global sex trafficking ring. How do you have a global sex trafficking ring that brings in billions of dollars in revenue, and there's just two people who are involved in it? Just Maxwell and Epstein. That's it. We got them. Those are the only two people involved. Okay, that's what they want us to believe.
Unbelievable. Graham, if you'll be so kind to leave the StreamYard and come back because your audio is choppy.
Okay, I'll be right back.
Okay. So keep smashing that like button. Graham's going to be back, and we have another guest coming on here, and we have a bit of breaking news that I just got. So smash that like button, share this live stream so we can get it out to more people. The more people that press like, the more people that will see this live stream. Let me make sure his name is spelled correctly. Hold on. Did I spell his name right? Hold on. Okay. Joining us now is Renee Johnston. She is a progressive activist who was a volunteer with Movement for a People's Party back in the day, and now is kind of a political free agent. You do a lot of different things. And a friend of mine, and you were on last week when we first heard that Cornel was running for president under the MPP, Movement for a People's Party. Let's see if Graham's working now.
How's that? Is that better?
Yes, much better.
Okay, great.
So I had a segment planned, but we have a little bit of breaking news. So we'll start with this. It's now confirmed. Chris Hedges just got back to me. Well, first, let's show the clip from the weekend. I guess Chris Hedges was at a panel with a few people, including Brianna Joy Gray, and was asked about Cornel West running for president as an MPP candidate. Let's listen to what he said.
Is this off the record?
On the record.
I've been playing with my phone because I set up a meeting with Cornel and the Green Party for tomorrow morning because of the issues you just raised.
Great.
Is that safe to say that you would recommend a Green Party run in the alternative, or?
I'm recommending that the Green Party, that Cornel runs as the Green Party candidate.
Yes.
And I think we should pick Shama to run with him. Not a joke, by the way. But yeah, I share all your concerns, and just on the issue of ballot access, the People's Party app doesn't have any. And I, having worked with Ralph in his campaigns, I saw all the impediments most of the Democratic Party throws to make it impossible for a third party candidate from the left to run. And part of it was challenging his petitions, which were all legit, but they challenged them in court. They ran up over $1 million in legal fees that Ralph had to pay. So, I mean, just all sorts of mechanisms. But I share all of your concerns. I mean, and I think that centering, getting, Howie Hawkins, who I like very much, he ran not just as a Green Party candidate, he had other smaller parties, but he was also the candidate. And I would like to see Cornel do the same thing.
So I had reached out to some Green Party people today, and there was kind of like a little confusion because they were not aware that if a meeting had taken place. Some of them said it didn't. But Chris Hedges just got back to me. Colin, being the spiffy man he is, just made us a nice little quote there. So Chris Hedges tells us, yes, the meeting took place. Other than that, there is nothing to say officially. I, of course, urged Cornel to run on the Green Party ticket. So we're not breaking Watergate, but we are confirming a meeting took place. I could also say that Cornel West, who I've asked to come on the show many times and was too busy, but I still love you. He got back to me because I asked him, according to the FEC website, he hasn't officially filed yet. So he told me in process. So I don't know. He told me that like 2 days ago, I think. So I don't know if it's related to his meeting with the Green Party or they just haven't filed yet. I don't really know how he could file, honestly, as MPP, because it's not clear to me they're an actual political party. They seem, as Renee could tell you, they're a PAC in some states. But anyway, we'll get to Cornel's, I think, less than great answer on the People's Party. But I first wanted to ask you, Renee, because you were on last week explaining what you know about MPP, why you have concerns about Cornel West running as an MPP candidate. I expressed beyond the ethical concerns of MPP. I also think they have no infrastructure, and I don't want to see Cornel West get just embarrassed because I actually think if he has an infrastructure, not that the Green Party is a well-oiled machine, but they did get Jill Stein on 48 states ballots. I think Cornel West, can he win the presidency as a Green Party candidate? I'm not going to lie. I mean, that could be very tough, but can he raise the stakes a little bit? Can he get better than Jill Stein got? Can he maybe sniff 5%? I think that's possible. But what's your thoughts just on they did meet? He's saying nothing's official, which tells me he knows more than he's saying. And is that good that at least West seems to be considering Green Party?
Well, I mean, it's hard to make a judgment, right, with what you were given. My thought initially.
Well, he can say no. I'm running MPP. That's it. He's
right. Well, also let's be clear. Like, Green Party is an actual political party, right? They already have a member who is listed in the FEC as running for president in 2024. So although I appreciate that everyone, and listen, not for nothing, at least they're a party. So if he decided to run with Green Party, he would be running actually with a political party. But he'd have to run in a primary, right? They're not going to anoint him as the presidential candidate. And I know, there's a lot of conversation about what happened in 2020 and the primary with that. And honestly, I wasn't involved, so I can't really give a whole lot of feedback on what happened with the Howie Hawkins primary and whatever, stuff happened that had people very upset with that turnout. But the primary happened, right? And so this means that in addition to preparing for a presidential campaign, he also has to campaign in a primary in order to get that seat. I just don't know. I don't know how prepared he is to do any of that. I mean, I'm glad at least he told you he's trying to work on his FEC. Okay. He definitely could not do that listing MPP because they are indeed not a party nor a PAC. They're a 527. They would have to set up a separate PAC in order to do that. My guess is he's probably going to set up a PAC that is separate. That is the, Cornel West for President PAC or something of that nature. And then he'd have to do it that way. But again, I want people to understand, like, there's no anointing and saying, oh, I'm going to run Green Party and I'm going to be the presidential nominee. There's going to be a process. So people need to keep that in mind.
Well, I'm a fan of democracy, even though we don't have one in America. But I can say if Cornel decides to at least run for the nomination, pretty sure he's going to win in a landslide. No offense to the other candidates, because it's Cornel West. But to me, Graham, I'd love to know your thoughts. And we are going to get to, I mean, I like Cornel West, but I have to, a spade is a spade. And his answer on MPP was just unbearable. But to me, Graham, as it stands right now, considering the Democratic Party is not like subtly rigging it, they've just announced we are rigging it. There will be no primary. As we're going to get to, CNN is having a town hall for Chris Christie tonight, even though he's at minus 20 in the polls. He's at 1%, okay? But they won't have a town hall for RFK, who's not my cup of tea, but he is at between 15 and 20%. Marianne Williamson's between like 6 and 12%. 1% they'll have a town hall for if you're a Republican, with no chance. But they won't have a chance with anyone that could threaten the current president. But as it stands right now, if it's Joe Biden, who's basically saying, go with the alternative, not the almighty, and Trump, who's going to be holding up a sign, it's only 4 indictments. Stranger things, couldn't it be that stranger things have happened? I mean, I don't want to lie to the audience or oversell it, but I do think Cornel West, when you have two of the most unpopular politicians in America with horrible, they both have a 31% favorability rating in a recent poll. I think Cornel West, with this message that molds inspirational with calling out the corruption, I think it could be a really, if not win, at least raise the stakes and bring more people into potentially a third party.
You bring up a lot of great points. I mean, God, I hope Trump's campaign slogan is "It's only 4 indictments." That's his T-shirt. That would just be. I wouldn't put it past me. Put it past him. There's overall. I mean, first of all, I think this election cycle is going to be the craziest thing we've ever seen. I mean, it's going to be America's out of its mind. America is a death cult with two. It's like an alcoholic home with two crazy parents, the Republicans and Democrats. It's an insane asylum. So I don't, we could have Lady Gaga running against, The Rock when it's all said and done. And
Jamie Dimon.
And Jamie Dimon just suddenly saying, and Trump going, "I'm the president of Trump Town," and whatever that means, wherever that is. But barring whatever kind of psycho circus we're going to get in the next 18 or 16 months or whatever it is till November of 24. I talked about on my show with Ron Placone and the problems with the People's Party. I discussed them at great length on my show. I don't think Cornel West was aware of it. I just think he was like, because he's just an old school activist who's like, the People's Party, this is my choice. If he's not running with the People's Party, I personally don't need to spend much time on all of their problems, and they never got anyone elected. They have no infrastructure. They've caused all these different things. Conceptually, I like a People's Party, but they did all these problems. If he's running with the Greens, and there's much to discuss in terms of the Greens are not a perfect third party, I have a very, very thin, cautious slice of optimism, only because Dr. West is the one guy that can unite people. He's the one guy, because when he says stuff like, "My brother's in the Ku Klux Klan," I don't agree with him. Like, he's calling the Klan his brothers, not as some sort of kowtowing, but like he really wants to unite people. And he understands. The problem I have with the Green Party is they always just campaign to other liberals. And I was like, the Green Party needs to go into red states and say, "Hey, working class conservatives, our party is actually better for you than the Republican Party and way better than the Democratic Party." I think Dr. West is a guy that, could he win as a Green candidate? I don't know. I'd love to just see him get 5%, and then it makes the Green Party more legitimate. But is there a guy that could unite this Green Party and bring in libertarians? Because here's the thing. There was a poll that was done after the midterms on the Hill did a poll. 59% of Americans said, if it's Trump versus Biden, they're voting third party. And that's something West and the Green Party can capitalize on. The fact that Americans, I talk to conservatives all the time. They're like, whatever, maybe they voted for Trump as the lesser two evils. Or they just like, I don't like Trump. I don't like DeSantis. I don't like these guys. I certainly am never going to vote for Joe Biden. So I think it could be interesting in that finally we could have somebody who this is a good thing and a bad thing. When he first announced last week, CNN was talking about it because everybody knows who Dr. West is. Nobody knows who Howie Hawkins or whatever no-name, God love him, Green Party, candidate they're going to put out there other than Dr. West. I mean, he's more well-known than Dr. Jill Stein. And his way of communicating and bridging people, I think he can go to like the working class white people that felt completely disenfranchised and abandoned. And that's what they resonated with Trump's 2016. Trump's 2016 campaign was very populist. It was right-wing and racist and sexist and all that, but it was very populist. He said, "I'm going to bring your job back." 2020 was just, I'm Trump, number one, Trump. But liberals and Democrats
drink hydroxychloroquine.
Just drink bleach and you won't get COVID or whatever. But in 2016, the liberals they refused to acknowledge that Trump ran a populist campaign. He was campaigning in front of closed factories saying, I'm going to open this factory back up, while Hillary was doing $200,000 a plate dinners, which we all knew that was nonsense. But they said, hey, at least somebody's in our small town talking to us while Hillary's flying over us. And I think Dr. West is a guy that can go talk to those people and say, I got your back too, man. This is the thing, because he comes from that lineage of like Fred Hampton, he saw the potential of what could have happened when Malcolm X and Dr. King actually started to see eye to eye towards the end of their lives, and what the power that was going to bring. And I think he can unify people. I'm not naive. I'm not like he's going to do it, because one of the things they said on CNN last week is the Democratic Party admitted last week he's a threat. So if he's a threat, that means they're going to start infiltrating the Democratic Party. They're going to get the Green Party. The Democrats are going to infiltrate the Green Party. They're going to get people within the Green Party to fight with each other. That's what they do. They get the FBI to do it. They're going to post some video of something Dr. West said in 1973 about, whatever, just a video of him looking at a girl in a miniskirt and say, oh, he's a sex creep, or whatever they're going to try to do to unseat him. So you're going up against a multi-billion-dollar machine that sees Dr. West as a threat to their power, which he is in the best way. So he's going to have to overcome that. But I think enough people are aware of the machine that they might see through it. But then again, I've gone insane betting on American people, the American public waking up and seeing stuff for real. So,
and Renee, I think it's important to mention, and we've talked about this, but I don't think it's intentional, but I think a lot of people overlook it. I do think there is an issue if you have such a strong Black visionary leader. And the Democratic Party, by the way, is like hemorrhaging Black support. Biden is hemorrhaging Black support. And you have, from what I could see from people I've spoken with, not just you, I mean, you could say this is movement for a white people's party. In a lot of the kind of pattern shifts that have happened and hostility that has happened to volunteers like you. Can you kind of talk about that? Because I don't want to say Cornel West didn't know about any of this. I mean, I've spoken with volunteers who reached out to him. His assistant confirmed receipt. I do believe he's aware that there were accusations against Nick Brana, that there were volunteers being purged. He might have just chose not to get involved.
Oh, he literally decided he didn't want to meet with people. And he made it clear that he had no interest in having those meetings. So right. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. And I know people are in the chat like, oh, she's not even excited. Like, I don't know what people want me to get excited about. No one's running for anything right now. Like, there's no platform, right? Like, there's no information. Now everybody's all excited. Oh, he might run green. We don't know if he can run green. We don't know. Like, no one knows what's going to happen. I don't know what people want me to jump up and down about, right?
I guess what I was asking you is, it seems to me, in addition to the infrastructure problem, let's say Cornel West actually got some momentum with MPP, not because of MPP, but because Cornel West. I think the corporate media could then find people out of the woodwork, the volunteers, ex-staffers, and magnify. And in this case, it would probably be true. A lot of the problems within the party with, if you want to call it racial insensitivity, I would say racism, the way they treated you and others, not to mention, I mean, there's been a lot of toxic accusations of sexual harassment and other things.
Right. And when the part of the purge that I was in happened after we were literally organizing to try to fix the organization, right? Like, let's be clear. 200 and something volunteers within that organization signed a petition that laid out all the things that needed to be fixed within MPP. What we got in response was kicked out in the middle of the night. Okay, so all these people, it drives me a little bit batty, because when all of this was going down in 2020, and we were saying, This is supposed to be an organization that's supposed to be horizontal. It's supposed to be self-organizing structures. You're supposed to be letting people organize within their own state. And all we were finding was one roadblock, one obstacle after another, after another, after another. And in my opinion, I got booted out simply because I was too loud, right? Like I talked too much about how many things were wrong. So when there was a fight on the Slack about whether or not white people could use the N-word, right? And they decided they were going to boot out a bunch of the black people who were fighting
Wait.
with the
Can
white
you
people.
Can you restate this? Because maybe I was asleep the last time you said this. There was an argument on their Slack because some of the white folks said what?
Not said. There was an argument whether or not white people had the agency to use the N-word, whether or not it was appropriate. There were a group of black people who were pushing back and saying, no, this is not appropriate. There was a white person who said there was an N-word pass, and this was something that existed. I'm black. I've never given a white person an N-word pass in my life, okay? On top of that, there was another white person who was saying, y'all are crazy. You can't be using the N-word. What's wrong? He was called a race traitor. All the black people involved in that conversation, plus the white guy, got booted out in the middle of the night. Like people I don't understand. I guess people just don't really pay attention to the nuance of these conversations. Because when I brought
Renee, I have to stop you. Nuance is not permitted on progressive YouTube. That is a criminal penalty. I don't want to hear any nuance on this program. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, to me, that is very clear. So when all of this happens, and I wasn't even involved in the majority of the conversation. I live on the East Coast. I have a job. I went to bed. I was not participating in this nonsense. And when I woke up, I didn't have access anymore. Okay. So when I was like, I don't know what's going on, I had multiple meetings with Nick, with advisory people, with Nick and other people who are getting involved, with Nick and people from that advisory council that they set up that people were also complaining about because nobody understood how this advisory council got picked. All of this stuff happened. And I was like, I don't have any interest in being a part of an organization where I can wake up in the morning and all the work that I've put in to organize within my state and to do all the work that I did, I'm suddenly cut off from because you don't like that I'm questioning the fact that y'all not organized and you don't know what the hell you're doing. This is not okay. So I declined. And I was like, I have no interest in coming back. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I'm not doing it, right? And then, like, a couple of weeks later, I got an email telling me that I broke community guidelines and I was being removed again from the organization.
And by the way, you later released a video, I believe, showing a Zoom you had with Nick Brano where he apologized, but then later he just kept to the you're a damn operative or infiltrator. That's what they call everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to just add in terms of the disorganized
Graham's face right now is cracking me up. I just
got
I didn't know any of this, man. And this I'm sorry to interject, but
in addition to the disorganized, I just want to add this, and I'd love to take the credit, but Renee did the calculations. I did check your homework. You were right. Colin, if you have this that you put together, I mean, this is from the Federal Election Commission last year. They're spending a whole lot more than they're making. And I don't want to minimize for a nonprofit or whatever the hell they are, because, it's hard to raise money. But that's not going to cut it in a presidential campaign. I mean, Hillary farts that out before breakfast in terms of money raised. And they put that back up, Colin. I mean, they spent $73,000 more than they took in. This is from the Federal Election Commission. You have to file your expenditures and your contributions. And I mean, I don't have line by line, but there's a lot of questionable expenses. And I reported last year that they spent $20,000 on a fucking logo that they didn't end up using. So this is why, in addition to, the ethical issues, there is sexual harassment and assault allegations. As somebody who has been falsely accused myself, I take that very seriously. I don't just automatically believe it. However, based on the information that was, I reported just that he was under investigation, Nick Brana. I didn't report any details of the allegation because it's not something I could prove, and I didn't think it was fair to. And the accuser at that point had not come out, but the accuser ended up working here for a few months, Zaina, and I I find her accusation credible, which brings us back to Cornel West. If you're already, you could take it down, Con. If you're already up against a massive mountain, which is running third party, why do you need this? Why do you need any added ammunition against you? And I want to show this clip. This is from A.B. Goodman interviewing Cornel West. I think it would be 10 times worse if he got momentum, because then you would have CNN and MSNBC and all these outlets who want to tank him and want to make him out to be, you know, oh, you're in league with sexual abusers and, you know, racist organizations. I mean, just look at his response to Amy Goodman, which, I'm sorry, Cornel, you not so good.
I also want to read from a New Republic article about your candidacy and about the People's Party. The article states, quote, while the party began in 2017 with noble roots to form a new political party independent from corporate money and influence, it's been mired in troubling allegations as well as broader organizational dysfunction, numerous sources of corroborated sexual harassment allegations against party founder Nick Brana. Last year, former party member Paula Jean Swearingen said she'd witnessed Brana try to force himself onto former party executive director Anna Day, who confirmed the allegations herself. Numerous party board members were apparently forced out for encouraging investigations into the allegations and questioning whether Brana was still fit to lead the party, unquote. Brana has also praised the prominent anti-vaxxer Robert Kennedy Jr., who's also running for president, but as a Democrat. He described Kennedy as a, quote, courageous leader whose environmental and vaccine advocacy has illuminated issues that few dare to confront. So he's the founder of the party that you're running with, the People's Party. Talk about why you chose the People's Party and if you would like to respond to those allegations. And also the bigger point of why you didn't choose, for example, if you wanted to be outside the race, the Green Party, which has more ballot access. But that's a lot there, Cornel.
Yeah, no, indeed. And I appreciate that question, too, my dear sister. I mean, I have a great love for my Green Party brothers and sisters. I've worked twice with them, and so I have nothing against their third-party operations. It would be nice if we had even a coming together, but that's something that is for a different show. But in terms of the history of the People's Party, you know, I was there at the founding. There's no doubt about that. And I've been a kind of honorary member of the board, even though I haven't participated, so I haven't followed all of the insides and outsides of what has happened. It strikes me that there's been some very bad and ugly moments. There's no doubt about that, but I don't want to adjudicate as to who actually is guilty or who's actually innocent, because I just don't know. But there has to be accountability, and especially when it comes to sexual harassment in terms of sisters of any color, those are very, very important issues to wrestle with and very serious charges in that regard. But as I said before, that for me, I wanted to be able to bring a serious critique to bear on the corporate duopoly. And the People's Party, in its inception and in its vision, is a populist one. So you got a number of different voices, heterogeneous. It is very loose. A lot of people say, well, is it an organization at all? I mean, does anything hold it together, and so forth and so on? Well, that we shall see. Those are very important questions. I don't want to act as if that they aren't serious challenges. But I think that if we can deliver in such a way that we are treating each and every working person and poor people of any color with great respect in this campaign, if we can raise voices to shape the discourse and dialogue in this campaign, if we can not just bring pressure to bear, but begin to point out that the choice between the neo-fascist brother Trump, criminal in so many ways, and the milquetoast Biden, who's so tied into corporate wealth and corporate power, they can have austerity in the recent debt ceiling agreement and still allow the military expansion, that we might be able to go much further than a lot of people think. But that history, has to be wrestled with. I don't want to downplay that at all. I just hope that we really do keep the focus, though, on what can be done at this particular moment, not to erase the history, but to make sure that as we make history in this moment, that we are doing all and everything we can.
So, not to, criticize Amy Goodman. I do think as a journalist, she should have said that obviously Brana denies it. I think that's fair. The accusations against him. I think his cockamamie story that he removed 5 board members suddenly on the weekend. I know because I reported it. He purged 5 board members who were demanding an emergency meeting to announce the results of an investigation into him, and the results were going to be the board recommending he be basically punished with 6 months of removal from supervisory capacity. He couldn't supervise anyone for 6 months. He had to take sexual harassment training, anger management training, I think management training. So he was going to be punished for something, but somehow those 5 board members were purged. And then all of a sudden it was this giant coup attempt with everybody's against Nick. I want to kind of step away from Nick because I think the broader point is, I don't know what you think, Renee. I thought, God bless Cornel West. That was a whole big salad of mess.
Yeah,
And I don't want to see this for him. I want to see it focus on the issues and him going against the 2-party duopoly, not being cornered on MPP's history. If he's on CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, that if he actually gets momentum, that's what they're going to attack him with.
It was very mealy-mouthed, honestly. I'm not impressed. Someone wants to know why you're talking to me. Let's be clear that the MPP cycle, my ousting was not the first time, since he booted out a bunch of board members after I was ousted. Obviously, it also wasn't the last time. MPP runs a cycle, right? They get people excited, then they get people engaged, and then they boot a bunch of people out when they terrorize Nick and make him feel like he actually has to do something. And then he calls them all infiltrators, and that's why he had to get rid of them, and then rinse and repeat, right? So if my count is right, I'm either, my getting thrown out in early 2020 was either the 4th or the 5th time a group of people had been thrown out of this organization for questioning Nick and for pushing back against his authority. Let's be clear. Nick is the president of People for Working Democracy, which is the DBA for the MPP, for the People's Party, for all of these other organizations. He owns it. He is the president. So if you don't want to hear about all the things that have gone wrong previously, because again, 2017 is when they started this organization. In 2018, after they failed because he lied to people about whether or not he actually had access to Bernie when he was doing his draft Bernie campaign, which is how this all started. When he lied to be, after that fell apart with that lie in 2018, they were going to run people. And by 2020, they were going to have ballot access everywhere. And they were going to run somebody, they were going to have it all squared away, and they were going to be done. And they were going to run somebody for president in 2020. That came and went. Nothing happened. 2022, in 2019, they were getting people together. They were gonna do this thing. They were gonna do it all. After 2020 fell apart, then 2022 come in. They were gonna start talking to people. They had a whole thing set up. They were gonna start running people for candidacy, for federal seats, for state seats. They were gonna run local things, yada, 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 yada. 2022 came, went, nothing happened. Now it's 2023, and we're starting this stupid ass cycle all over again. And people are mad at me for pointing out that we're starting this stupid ass cycle all over again. Can
I just show one? Can I just show one tweet that I think basically wraps up everything we've all been talking about? Colin, could you show up a tweet that's in this section? Has anyone gotten a reply from the Cornel West campaign? Has anyone gotten a reply from the Cornel West campaign for their volunteer submission other than the canned auto response? This is why you don't let Brana run the show. He's a horrible organizer and only focuses on press and online hype. This is another botched launch. This is not the first person I saw try to volunteer through the website and could not.
And there were a group of people who were post petitioners who thought we were all crazy when we were coming out and speaking about what happened. And no, we're going to fix it. That was just y'all. And then they all ended up having to leave. When the Black voter circle was decimated, when he booted people out in the middle of the night, there were a group of people who stayed behind. They were going to fight for it. They were going to make it happen. They were going to happen. They ended up posting a statement that they were disbanding and they weren't going to remain part of the organization because MPP didn't care about Black people. Like, this is not, I'm not just doing this for my health. Like, I don't make any money off of this. I just don't want people to get ripped off. I'm sick of watching American, working people who just want to see something change, who just want to see something viable, something happen that's like real. Give people something real to actually focus on. Like, I'm sick of this conversation. It's all bullshit. I don't want bullshit anymore. I'm almost 50 years old, and my whole life it's been bullshit. I fell for Obama's bullshit. He was gonna change. We were gonna do this thing. We're gonna and it was bullshit, right? Like, I don't want to do this anymore. So the reason I'm so argumentative about it, the reason I keep talking about it, the reason I say yes every time somebody asks me to come on and do these things, despite the fact that I get attacked every time I do it.
Fuck your attackers. Fuck them all.
Somebody has to do it, right? Like, somebody has to say, y'all, this bullshit's been going on for years. So, okay, could this be the one magical time in the history of MPP that they actually get some shit right? It could be. My crystal ball broke this morning. I don't know if that's really going to happen. Like, would it be nice if there was actually a third party run? Sure. Are you going to get an actual third party run that's legitimately for poor working people, for people of all creeds and colors and everything, from a group of people who literally went on one of these weird ex-Fox News people to say that they're no longer progressives and they're going to work with the right? Like, this is Nick Branna talking. Like, 3 months ago. What are we talking about right now?
Breaking news.
Breaking news.
Double confirmation from another Green Party source. I can confirm that talks have been held. I don't know the results of those talks. Yeah, definitely a positive. I'll wrap this up because we don't need to beat a dead horse, and I got one more quick topic. Graham, at the end of the day, listen, I'm not going to give Cornel West a complete pass because these are serious allegations against MPP. I think he was peripherally aware of them. I don't know if he looked too deep into them. I think it's a good thing that at least maybe he didn't expect the pushback that he got because he didn't look too deep into them. So based on the pushback that he received, which was a lot, it seems like he's entertaining, going green. Not that that's, rainbows and sunshines, but bottom line, I think you and I both agree, let's not get it twisted and put all our apples in one basket. Electoralism will save us. We need to focus on other things. But at the very least, having somebody, I really, really respect Jill Stein. I think Cornel West is just a different type of candidate. And I think he really has cross appeal. I don't know if he would win, but I think he could really appeal not just to like white folks who have got hoodwinked by Trump. I think he could appeal to a lot of people who don't vote. I think he could appeal to a lot of people that do not vote. You're muted.
While he fixes that, I want to make clear that obviously a Green Party run would be better if he wins a primary than a People's Party run. Let's be clear about it. At least they're a party.
How's that?
Yeah, there you go. And by the way, I personally got very excited with the thought of Cornel West and Shama Sawant. I mean, I would die and go to heaven.
She can't run for VP. She wasn't born in the United States. It's the same requirement. Sorry. Okay. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. Sorry.
That's good. That's a good piece of information to have. First of all, thanks for having me on the show. And Renee, I really appreciate everything you're saying. I didn't know half of this stuff. Most of this stuff.
I don't think most people do.
They don't know. And I'm glad you're out here talking about it. And I share we're in the same age bracket of like, man, I got no more. I ain't doing backflips for anybody. I'm done. I had my house stolen from these two awful parties. I voted for Hope and Change. I saw them drop more bombs. I went to war zones to entertain the military. And I was like, there was no difference than when I was telling jokes when Bush was the president, when Obama was the president. There was no difference. So I share it's a healthy skepticism. I appreciate you spreading the word. And people that attack you are just, I don't know. It's the problem with America. We're all bred and raised to pick a team. And someone's like, I'm People's Party team. So if you say one thing negative about it, I'm going to lose my shit on Twitter because I have no life. Well, go outside. That's why I'm a surfer. When I'm surfing, I don't hear any of you morons on Twitter, and my life is better than yours. So I just want you to know that. Just that's me talking to the trolls. But with regard to, I think, the People's Party, if this is true and what Hedges said and this new confirmation you just got, if it's the smartest thing West can do, just from a purely like, I want to challenge these two parties. Oh, the People's Party's too toxic. I'm out. I'm going to go with the Green Party. I have a better chance with the Green Party. What possibly could happen can he be president? That's a long shot. But what really could happen that could slowly transform things, and I'm with you, Jordan. Electoral politics is like number 5 on the list. We need to be out in the streets doing what they did in France. Like the labor movement in this country really needs to unify. I'm in SAG-AFTRA. We just voted for strike authorization. There's a strike happening in LA now. And the entertainment unions need to start supporting Amazon. We need to stop shopping at Amazon. We need to go to only Starbucks that are unionized. So I'm hoping America can unify on the labor front, because that is the thing that unifies all of us. We're all getting screwed in some crappy job, like everybody, red state, blue state, whatever. So with regard to Dr. West, if he runs and gets some steam with the Green Party, some good things could happen, which is we might actually get some Greens in the Senate and the Congress. And not just like some school board in Asheville, North Carolina or whatever, but like actual people that can do something. That could help. That could be a positive thing. Getting more, just his overall message of unity could be a good thing. But let me speak to everybody watching this show. This Luke Skywalker ain't coming to save the day, kids. It ain't it's not. America is a broken system. There's a lot of things we can do, direct actions, help in your community, but we all need to look in the mirror. We are living in a collapsing empire. It's not, is it going to collapse? We are collapsing. When and how deep the collapse, those are the only question marks. So Biden's health or the CIA could just get him out of there. We might not even, you know what I mean? Like Biden, he's one more fall on a stage away from Kamala being the interim president. So, I mean, which she'd then pick Pete Buttigieg, which would be the perfect CIA pairing because he was a naval intelligence officer. So look, I'm going to follow this race because it's interesting, and maybe some cool change could come out of this if Dr. West, can move the needle with the Green Party. But let's make no mistake, folks. You're in a collapsing empire. Think about moving out of here, buy Bitcoin, and, grow your own food because, the ship has sailed. America, is done.
The last thing I'll say on this, and granted, it's a lot easier said than done because most people are not in this situation. However, I've said this for a while. I'm not saying toss electoralism out. I mean, I do cover elections, but as a journalist and as a human, I've evolved over the years, and you kind of learn what is cyclical and what could be revolutionary. And to me, the biggest thing is we're going to have elections, and they're always going to be branded as the most important election of our lifetime. But the bottom line is, I cover the same protests over and over and over and over and over again. It's no knock against BLM or the climate protesters or the Medicare for all protesters or name your issue. We can't stop. We can't keep marching around the same blocks, chanting the same shit. Direct action without an economic threat. Let me repeat, an economic threat. I'm not talking about violence, but if you continue squeezing down on the neck of Mrs. Joe and Jane American, violence is inevitable. And the reason France looked like they were storming the Bastille with a modest increase of 2 years to the retirement age was because they have basic social safety nets. So they're not staying up at night petrified of losing their job because they have health care and other things. Not that it's great to lose your job, but it's not the end of your life. And not the end of your children's life if you lose your job in France. I believe the protest movements now need to start organizing and coming up with economic components. Like I've been talking to the Amazon workers. You got a massive Staten Island warehouse that you just unionized. Amazon is dragging its feet. They won't come to the table to collectively bargain after you want a union. You got to figure out a way to go on strike. Every single one of the 6,000 workers, and America needs to support them through mutual aid and a pot of money. We need to do that on a grander scale so that people who can't afford, which is most people, to risk going on strike, and not everyone has a strong union that has some type of strike pay if you go on strike, but we need to start having economic components. Just imagine, I always say this, we've seen we could have mass mobilization. It happened during the George Floyd protests. You had millions of people out all across the country. In some cities, they went on for a year. In Portland, every night for a year, but there was no economic component. It's not, I don't want to lie to people. You're not going to have a general strike tomorrow. You have to start smaller, and then it takes off from there. So that's my thoughts. I would like to see more of that.
And Jordan, be reminded, like all those millions of people in the street, it was international, went on for a year in some places that cops still got more money. Sorry. Yeah. Like they're still trying to tear down an entire urban forest to build Cop City in Atlanta. They've already approved money for a Cop City in New Jersey. Like they approved that funding for Cop City in Atlanta last week, despite 14 hours of people coming forward and speaking out against it. These people don't care. They don't care about working people. They don't care about me. They don't care about nobody in the chat. They don't care. They don't, as long as we go to work and do our little menial jobs and make sure that they keep making their profits and rolling their money in, they don't care what we want, because unfortunately people have to live.
But their donors do. Their donors do.
Right.
It really needs to, I so agree with this. Everything we're saying is so accurate, because it's, all they care about is money. So you have to threaten their money. I mean, the George Floyd protests that summer are such a great example, because remember after Jacob Blake got shot, the Milwaukee Bucks didn't play a playoff game. Mm-hmm. And the NBA shut down in the playoffs. All the major sports leagues started shutting down. That is billions of dollars. And then Obama calls up and says, calls LeBron out and says, go back to playing ball. And I'm like, that was the missed opportunity, because if the Milwaukee Bucks said, we're not playing, the owner of the Bucks would have gone to the governor of Wisconsin, the mayor of Milwaukee, the mayor of Racine, Wisconsin, and said, you better fix this cop thing so I can start making money with the basketball team. And that's the only thing anyone's going to respond to, is shutting down their money. It's a problem. You're right. These protests, and God love these people in the street. They've got noble intentions, but the billionaires go protest on Saturday. Great. I know you'll be back to work on Monday because you need your health insurance and you got bills to pay. So
it's the system is like the system is a mess, and there,
for us, it's a mess for us.
It's a mess. That's correct. If you have a lot of money and you don't have any concerns with getting your next meal and keeping your roof over your head. And listen, not for nothing, I'm okay, right? I have a job, I have insurance, my husband has a job, like we have a house, like I'm okay. I don't want to pretend like I'm somebody who's really struggling, but at the same time, if we had a major medical emergency, we wouldn't be in any better of a shape than anyone else, right? Like we're not that far out of it, like we can afford something like that. So the reality of the situation is this system is set up to keep everybody fighting. I talk to people all the time who get mad at me when I talk about racism. And they're like, oh, we got bigger problems, the World War III and nuclear war and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, that's all great. But you're mad at me for something that I didn't create, nor am I sustaining it. The reason the separation works is because people allow racism to happen, right? They live with it. They push it. They condone it because for them, it works for them, right? It's not a problem. Racism is not a problem unless you're oppressed by it, right? So this whole idea that all of these things aren't completely entwined and done so intentionally to make sure that we stay in this position of always groveling and trying to get the next best thing, it is all intentional. So people need to wake up. They need to understand that this system was not built for us. So everything that you're doing that's within this system only helps to keep the system going. And we're all guilty of it. We all live in the capitalist system. We all, whoever has a job, you're working for somebody else likely. It's unlikely that you're doing things just for your own, especially if you're watching this show, right? Like that's not your life. And I get that. But also we have to be able to really be aware and cognizant of the things that are feeding the system. And we are all feeding the system by pretending that, oh, this next thing is going to make it okay. Like, it doesn't, like, as a Black person, it's really hard for me not to vote, right? Because I understand. I get the amount of lives that were lost, the amount of blood that was spilled in order to give me that right. I have a really hard time not voting. But what I do is I vote for the referendum. I go and I vote for the local thing because I realize at the federal level in the presidential race, it doesn't mean anything to me. Like it's useless. But I figure if I at least go and I mark a check for something, then I've held on to that one thing that was given to me. But, people really have to start reading. They need to start understanding that the reason that socialism doesn't exist is because the system convinced everybody that socialism was a bad thing, right? All of a sudden, all of the voices that were talking about socialism, when you look back at history, they told you, oh, no, they weren't talking about socialism. They were talking about something else, right? Like there's so many historical perspectives of how we all got duped by the system, and we have to become unduped. We have to wake up and just pay attention to what's going on, because we're never going to get out of this mess if we wait for somebody else to do it. We're going to have to do something different.
The last thing I'll say, because I got to go help with my child who's now in the 7-month regression and won't sleep. Last thing I'll say, this is what I was making a point last night on a spirited show I went on, which was something. Everyone's so focused, like STEM enter for STEM exit. Folks, it doesn't really matter. I mean, go whichever route you want. If Cornel West gets momentum, you think they're not going to fucking rig it against Cornel West? Seriously. Do you think they're not? Do you think it's only applicable to the Democratic Party where an election would be rigged? Do you think if Cornel West starts getting 25, 30% of the vote, 15% of the vote, you think there's not going to be massive lawsuits from the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, whichever one feels most threatened, to get him off the ballot? You don't think any shenanigans would go on election night? So my point is, we're not going to vote our ways out of this. That's not to say don't try and build a third party. I'd like 4, 5, 6 parties. But I think too many people are kind of being hoodwinked into the main focus is get it out of the Democratic Party, which is fine. Do whatever you want. I don't tell people what strategy. But to me, I've learned over the last few years, specifically covering the Amazon workers unionizing, the Starbucks workers unionizing, being on the ground with the John Deere workers who went on strike successfully, the Nabisco workers I interviewed, Frito-Lay, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I really think that the way, I don't want to say the way out of this, but the way to kind of start unraveling this fucking cesspool that is the United Corporations of America is through worker power and labor, not just unions. But through, I don't know if it was Graham or Renee, the only thing they'll respond to is if you hurt their quarterly profits. The only thing they'll respond to is if you hurt their ability to do stock buybacks. The only thing they'll respond to is if they can't buy that extra yacht. That's the only thing these psychopaths at the top care about. And they have the government purchased. So whether it's the Democratic Party or, I think Bernie made mistakes. I think Bernie could have won and shot himself in the foot. But whether it's the Democratic Party, third party, without the mass organizing on the outside with that economic component, I think we're going to be having the same conversation in 5 years, 10 years, and 15 years. And the point is, to come up with that mass economic organizing, we're going to have to all accept we're not going to all agree on every single political topic. We're not going to all agree on every single political strategy. Nuance is going to have to return into the building, and it's okay. I don't condemn you if you were not forced to vote. I was, but I'm not going to cancel you. I'm not going to cancel you if, you
are in favor of vaccine mandates like I was, and then I was canceled by all these crybaby bitches on the left because they got all tied up with one fucking issue.
This mentality, this toxic mentality that No, I'm the real pure leftist. This game of Survivor, who's the real pure leftist left standing? It's a great circle jerk and it's good for clicks. It ain't good for organizing what we're describing. So that's the last thing I have to say. We'll skip the last topic, Colin, because my wife's asking for help. Graham, tell people where they could find you. You do great comedy shows and other things.
Yes, you can go to GrahamElwood.com. You can watch my new comedy special, Manifest It, where I call out the two-party system and the war machine in a very comedic manner. Also, I'm going to go live today at 5 o'clock at youtube.com/Graham Elwood.
Be specific. 5 o'clock Pacific, 8 o'clock Eastern.
That's right. Just whatever 5 o'clock you want. Just pick one. No,
Yeah.
You're right. 5 o'clock Pacific, 8 o'clock Eastern. Yeah, go to GrahamElwood.com. You can follow me, all these at my social media. I put out comedy clips. And I do another podcast with Lee Camp called Government Secrets. All of that is at GrahamElwood.com. Sign up for my newsletter too.
In the spirit of socialism, I am going to forego telling you to become a member to Status Coup today because Graham was demonetized wrongly by YouTube. And if you got a couple bucks, check out is it Patreon?
Yes, patreon.com/Graham Elwood. I really appreciate that, Jordan. Yeah, we've been.
And I'll take the kickback at Status Coup for everyone that's no, I'm kidding. Sign up for Graham because I mean we don't make a ton of money on YouTube. I mean, I don't know, Colin, what do we make on YouTube? Like $2-3 grand a month if we're lucky. But they demonetized him wrongly. So if you got a couple bucks a month to support Graham Elwood, because I think honestly we need a lot of different flavors. You got on the ground reporting, but I think it's healthy to have comedians that care about our Earth. And you've done great research on Epstein and other things. So definitely check out Graham's Patreon. We'll put it in the description and his website for comedy shows. By the way, Graham, did I tell you this? You kind of did it. You kind of, during my courtship with my wife, won her over to me. I think I told you this.
Yes, you did. You came to our comedy show on a first date.
Well, second or third, but I think at that point she thought I was kind of just like some YouTuber in his underwear blogging. She didn't understand that I go out and report. So I went to the show you and Ron had in New York City, and there was a bit of a line to meet me after, just pictures and stuff. And she was like, "Whoa, this guy's something."
That's how socialism works, man. If I can help you close the deal, then you know what I mean? That's how I'm all for it. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Renee, where can people find you on Twitter or wherever?
I'm R Johnston 815. That's it. I don't have a show. I don't make money.
You should. And by the way, can I say, Renee, somebody told me a long time ago, if you're pissing off people, that means you're doing something right. So fuck them.
I'll take that. I will take
them. And thank you everybody for watching. We'll be back here tomorrow night. Well, it's going to be recorded because we don't have our live stream here yet, but I will be going to Bedminster golf course where Donald Trump, after his arrest down in Florida, because he's getting formally arrested tomorrow night. No, excuse me. Tomorrow afternoon, he's getting formally arrested and going before a judge, second time. I won't be in Florida. But then he's flying up to the golf course in New Jersey at Bedminster, where I wish I was making this up. They buried his first wife, Ivana. Do you know this? That they buried his wife, Ivana, on the 9th hole on the golf course? I'm not making this up. Some people believe some of the classified documents are buried there. But so he's going up to Bedminster to give a speech to his supporters after his arraignment and arrest. So I'm going to go there and talk to some of his supporters. We've just purchased another live stream. Colin has our main one down in Texas. So we won't be live, but we'll record it and then flip it around because I'd love to know, what do they think? What would you say if, I don't know, Obama had nuclear secrets next to the toilet? So we'll do that. And Tina is going to be going back to Cop City in a week and a half. And we're working on some other stuff on the ground. So definitely consider supporting us also. Thank you, too, for taking time. And everybody have a good night.
Thank you.